Alright, so you want to be a dungeon master in 5th edition, but you have questions. You're like, how do I start? How do I get into it? Where do I go? What do I do? What resources do I have? What should I get? I hope this video can help cover and answer some of those questions. So, first thing is, whenever you're a dungeon master and you're starting off and you're new and you're looking for what you can do, you have a couple options, and the two major options that you have are run official campaign settings that are books written by Wizards of the Coast for you to run in your games, or you can find some other stuff. I mean, this is a guide primarily for 5th edition stuff, and if you want to be a 3.5 Dungeon Master or a Pathfinder Dungeon Master, well, I was there at one point. I play 5th edition now, personally. I prefer 5th edition for a lot of stuff, but I might play a Pathfinder game every once in a while. When it comes to 5th edition, there are actually some resources that I don't know if everyone knows about, and as a new Dungeon Master, I want to introduce some of these things to you, primarily just books. In front of me, I have 5 different books that I've purchased for 5th edition, and I recommend all of them for different reasons. And some of them are mandatory. I'd say there are at least 2 mandatory books here that I would say you need to get in some form in order to run the game at all. And so the first mandatory book, I would say absolutely mandatory, is your Player's Handbook. Okay, you need to be familiar with the Player's Handbook. Your players need to be familiar with the Player's Handbook. You need a PHB, period. That's just going to make everything way easier. I would say if you can get the book in a hard copy, it probably would make everything a lot easier for you. The PHB obviously has all your playable races that are in this in the base version of the game, all the classes. It's an extremely useful book, and I would say that there are more things you can do with it, and we'll get back to the Player's Handbook in a minute, but I'd say that's the first mandatory one if you want to run a game, period. I think you're going to need a Player's Handbook. If you want to run now the next book is the Monster Manual, I would say is absolutely mandatory, but if you are running an official campaign, they have a lot of stat blocks for monsters. So I'm not actually sure. I don't run too many official things, but I'm pretty sure that if you run like Curse of Strahd or Lost Mines of Phandelver or something like that, I believe there's all the stat blocks for the monsters you'll be facing. They're in the book, so you don't need the monster manual per se. But I would highly recommend, if you're running any sort of homebrew setting, that you get the Player's Handbook and the monster manual as the bare minimum to run your games. The bare minimum. The next 2 books I'm going to show you are optional ones. These are this one I would say is the more optional of the 2. Well, they're all optional, but this one is the Dungeon Master's Guide. Now, if you're a brand new Dungeon Master and you're running your own homebrew setting, I would recommend this book because it is useful. And when I say it is useful, let me see. They have some things in here just for like creating your own multiverse and stuff like that. Now, you don't have to follow these rules. You can just make up your own shit because you're the Dungeon Master and you're running your own game. But where I'd say it's useful is when you get on to, let's see. It teaches you pretty much in here. If you don't know anything at all, let me just show you. Table of contents here. So you have, like, for instance, you have, like, creating NPCs, how to make dungeons and settlements and stuff like that. And then up in here you have, like, actually running the game, table rules, movement, how to actually learn how to properly sequence stuff. So if you don't know anything at all, I would recommend this book. But where it's useful is at the back of the book, or the 3rd section, is there's an entire gigantic section of just magical items. Like, there's probably, I would say, 70 pages, I would say, approximately, of just magical. Actually, more than that. I think it's like half the fucking book. Treasure 133 to like 200 something, 230. So it's about 100 pages of treasure. Now, I personally use this as a baseline. I like taking some of the weapons and stuff that are in here, some of the ancient artifacts, and just reskinning them and making them whatever I want them to be for my world. So I actually like the DMG. It's a book that I use every once in a while. There's some rules in there that I like to refer to, and there's some custom stuff in the DMG that's not in the PHP that I'm eventually every once in a while I'm like, can I see the DMG please? And I just kind of check it for whenever there's a rules lawyer question or something like that. Sometimes you can't find the answer in the player's handbook. Sometimes you can't find it in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So these 3 books, these were the standard. This is what came out with 5th edition. So these 3 books are what came out with 5th edition, and I honestly think that they're 3 pretty good core books. And if you're looking to run a game that's totally homebrew, these 3 books are fine to pick up. So if you're looking for 3 books to get started, these 3 books are great to get started. Now the add-on books, these 2 books that I'm about to show you, one of them is official, one of them is unofficial, and I highly recommend both of them. So the next one that just came out recently is this one, Volo's Guide to Monsters. This is the limited edition local game store copy that I picked up. Like, they were selling them so early. It was like 2 weeks before the book actually came out, so I was able to get a limited edition copy. This book is great because it has more playable races. You can actually have playable, like, there's more like built-in playable races that are actually like just normal races, and then they have monstrous races, so your players can play as goblins, kobolds, orcs, stuff like that, which is really cool. And they also have in here the 2 other sections. There's like an add-on to the monster manual, which has just more variants of monsters that have been that are in the monster manual, which is pretty cool. Like, you have, this is my favorite page, one of my favorite pages. It's come on. More beholders, the beholders and beholder variants, which is really cool. So you don't have to worry about going to, like, if you wanted to get some monsters from 3.5, instead of having to do your own conversion and have to do all that, which to some of you is sounds like I'm just that's gibberish, right? You actually just have it here in Volos. There's some they converted some old monsters. And there's some really cool original monsters in here as well. Like the beholder variants are sweet. But another section in there is the very beginning. It's monster lore. It's examples of lairs and stuff like that. Some people may think that's dumb. Maybe some people like to create their own lore. I think it's cool because you get to be exposed to specific lore for specific creatures, which you can take or leave. You can use that as inspiration for your own variant of the lore, or you can just use it. It's really cool. And the last book, this is not one that is official. This is an unofficial book, and it's not one that everyone knows about. So I think it's really cool to bring this up. It's Tome of Beasts. It is by Kobold Press. Here, you can see on the side. Kobold Press, Tome of Beasts. I just got this one today, and I can already say this is a freaking sweet book. Now, it's kind of light because it doesn't use the same... it doesn't use like the same paper and stuff as the official books. It's not as heavy, but it is a really, really sweet book. It's 400 pages of monsters. It's just a monster manual. It's all it is. It doesn't have any more. Doesn't have anything else in it. You can actually they do have at the very back. If your players want to play as more races, they actually do have some. They have like a chart. Yeah. Actually, it's more. It's more for NPCs. But you can create NPCs using the races that they've featured in the book, which I think is freaking cool. So this book is the ultimate. If you want to have a compendium of monsters to choose from, you should get Volos, the Monster Manual, and this thing, Tome of Beasts. Now, we're talking $200 in books, probably. I think this one was like $45. I bought this when it was first available, the first day I could. I was sick. The day it was being sold, Volos, that is. This was the day it was being sold at the game store. I was sick, so I went the next day and got it for $50. The Tome of Beast was like $40, 45 actually. And then these 3 books I got off Amazon for $35 a piece. There's $100 here and $100 here. So that's $200 in books that I've spent on 5th edition. Now that sounds like a lot, right? And it is. But if you're looking to, really have like I said, a compendium to pull from of books and having a very deep library, and you don't want to do, if you don't want to do conversions between the old 3.5 books to these, which you can do, if you're really interested in that kind of stuff, if you're kind of more of experienced DM and you've run 3.5 for a long time or whatever, and you're trying to get into 5th edition and you want to and you want more monsters and just have a more varied compendium of stuff, you can do conversions from 3.5 to 5. It's a lot of work, I feel, and you don't want to like make something totally imbalanced. So so yeah, that's what we got going on here. These are the 5 books that I would recommend. The 3 I would recommend at least the PHB and the Monster Manual. If I was to recommend a 3rd book, I would say Bolos. 4th book would be the Tome of Beasts, and the 5th book would be the DMG. Dungeon Master's Guide is not really that important, I wouldn't say, but if you are looking, like I would try to get a hold of that in some sort of PDF form, and if you can, just because of the magical items that are in there. And I think the rest of the book is fairly okay. It's not really for me, because I've already worked on a homebrew setting for a long time, so I don't really need to reference that book so much. But the rest of the books I would say are very important to get, and I want to go back to the Player's Handbook. Is something else that a lot of newer DMs don't really know too much about, is something that I think that not everyone is even aware of if you're not keeping up with like the D&D subreddit and stuff like that, which I will, I'll put a link to the 3 subreddits I use for role-playing games in the description below, is Unearthed Arcana. Now you're like, what's Unearthed Arcana? Well, Unearthed Arcana is essentially the errata that Wizards of the Coast put out probably, it seems like it's like once every 2 weeks or so, like that. It's essentially they come out with changes, errata, to the book. For instance, they have in there a rework for the Ranger class. They came out with the Goliath and the Arakoa, I believe is what they were called. The bird people, playable races that you could play. They came out in the Unearthed Arcana first. What it is it's kind of like a beta test. It's not official, but it's official. It's made by the it's made by Wizards of the Coast, but it's not official, as in they're not going to be running it in official games. Which, who cares, right? It's more resources for you that are made by Wizards, right? So take advantage of them. And I'll put a link to where you can find the Unearthed Arcana in the description. If you stay up to date on the D&D subreddits, if you have a Reddit account and you subscribe to the subreddits, you will find they post the Unearthed Arcanas every week, every 2 weeks, whenever they do come out. You will be aware because they post about Unearthed Arcana this. They just came out with, I believe it was last week, cleric domains. So there's a lot more cleric domains. They just came out with bard colleges like a couple weeks ago. So there's new bard colleges. There's more cleric domains. I think there's more barbarian archetypes. There's a swashbuckler archetype for rogues. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's in Unearthed Arcana that's not printed, but you can get it in PDF form for absolutely nothing, and you can add it to your game. Now it gets hard because you have some in hard copy and some in digital. You have to find a way to make that work, but yeah, those. So there you go. There's some resources that you maybe didn't know about. So if you're looking to get into DMing and you have any questions at all, please feel free to let me know. I can help you guys out. When it comes to running official games that are like Rise of Tiamat and stuff like that, I can't really help you with that. I don't run those games. I don't run that type of adventure. I run literally right here, and then I make the adventure. So that's the way I run things. Of course, not everyone does it that way. But if you have any questions about homebrew and what type of rule questions you have, stuff like that, I'm not the greatest rules lawyer of all time when it comes to D&D, but when it comes to what resources and what you need, I can help you out with that for sure. So feel free to let me know, and I'll help you guys out. Thanks, and have fun running your games.